The former president is lying about the record of Governor DeSantis. He's lying about how far he went to deal with shutdowns that were going across the country but not going on in Florida. He's lying about some of his accomplishments in the past, that is the governor's. Now, I know this kind of stuff sticks if you keep doing it, but do you think there's a chance it boomerangs and Republicans start saying, you might have a shot at the nomination, but you'll never get elected doing that?
Hey folks, Dale Jackson here. Today we're going to talk about Donald Trump's rally yesterday in Waco, Texas. Yes, a lot of people wanted to talk about it being in Waco and what that actually meant and what the signal was supposed to be. But I think it was pretty clear what the signal actually was. I'm scared of Ron DeSantis. That's what the signal actually was. Listen to what a lot of the speech was about. It was about Ron DeSantis. And I get it. He's running a Republican primary. That makes complete sense for him to be talking about Ron DeSantis. But there's a part in this speech where he goes into this long story about how he's a loyalist. And if you listen to the crowd wants absolutely no part of this. Look in the background. You'll see them checking their phones, and you'll see them staring off into the thing. You see nobody eating this up. This is not a line of attack that Trump supporters want to hear. They may choose Donald Trump over Ron DeSantis, but they're not psyched about trashing Ron DeSantis because conservatives like Ron DeSantis. They like what he's been doing. But here's Donald Trump starting off with the first line being, I'm a loyalist, which Donald Trump is a lot of things. Loyalist is not one of them.
But I'm a loyalist, and when a man comes to me, tears in his eyes, he's at almost nothing in the polls. And he's fighting somebody that's at 42, and he's got almost $30 million in the bank. He's at almost nothing. He's got no cash. And I said, I can't give you an endorsement. There's no way you can win. You're dead. But he fought a little bit, like 150. He was certainly no Jim Jordan, that I can tell you. He fought a little bit, just a little bit, on impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, meaning on television, because I didn't know him very well. But I saw him, so he came and he really wanted. I said, you can't win, can you? How do you can win? Sir, if you endorse me, I'll win. Please. Please, sir, endorse me. And I said, all right, let's give it a shot, because honestly, the Secretary of Agriculture, Adam Putnam, good man, but I never met him. I didn't know him. So I don't feel guilty about it. You know, if you don't know somebody. I wish I knew him, actually. You want to know the truth, I wouldn't have done this. So what happened is, I said, let's give it a shot, Ron. And I endorsed him, and he became like a rocket ship. Within one day, the race was over. He got the nomination. Then he had to run against a man that was the hottest in all of politics. He was the hottest person. Remember, it was him and Stacey Abrams, the two hottest people in the Democrat Party. So we laugh at him now, but at the time, he was one of the hottest people in politics, Matt, right? He comes from a state that Matt's very familiar with. Now, he turned out to be a crackhead. But I did rallies for Ron that were massive rallies, and they were very successful. So we got him the nomination. We then got him the election. He said, I don't think I can make it, because the other guy was really popular, believe it or not. He was going to be the next president of the United States. But that didn't work out too well. They caught him in a crack den. Of course, anything goes in politics today. He could maybe he's going to make a comeback. Who knows? But think how bad Florida would be. Remember one thing. Florida has been tremendously successful long before this guy became governor. Florida was tremendously successful under Rick Scott. He was, look, whether you like him or not, Charlie Crist, it was very successful. He was a Republican at the time. But Florida's been successful for decades. In fact, probably as or more successful than it is now. But when a man, you know, you get him elected, and there's no quid pro quo. Get rid of that word. Remember those words? Quid pro quo, with the perfect call I made with the Ukrainian president. But when you're getting a guy, so he gets the nomination because of you, he wins the election because of you, 2 years later, the fake news is up there saying, will you run against the president? Will you run? And he says, I have no comment. I say, that's not supposed to happen. I have no comment. No.
We've all seen Trump speeches before, and they're rambling kind of like this is. But he usually has the crowd laughing and going along, and then he's telling the story about how these people came and they groveled to him, and oh, they're so sad, and he does the voices and stuff. Absolutely nothing here. Absolutely nothing here. And the crowd just has no interest in this conversation. And I think Donald Trump's going to have to figure that out. I think he can beat Ron DeSantis without doing this kind of stuff. This just kind of makes him look weak and pathetic. And one of the things about Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, was that he had this bravado about him. This is not that. This is like an insecure guy telling a story that he doesn't even believe himself, but he's trying to sell it to people so he looks tougher and better and all this other stuff. I just don't think anyone's buying it, and the crowd doesn't seem that into it. This clip did not get into Ron DeSantis' record, but it should be noted his takes on Ron DeSantis' record are just not true, and Neil Cavuto on Fox News points that out.
Is the former president is lying about the record of Governor DeSantis. He's lying about how far he went to deal with shutdowns that were going across the country but not going on in Florida. He's lying about some of his accomplishments in the past, that is the governor's. Now, I know this kind of stuff sticks if you keep doing it, but do you think there's a chance it boomerangs and Republicans start saying, you might have a shot at the nomination, but you'll never get elected doing that?
I think we're going to have to wait and see. Again, I think for hardcore Trump supporters, they don't care what he says, whether it's true or not. They're gonna be with him.
None of the major presidential candidates that we've had over the last couple of years, going all the way back to Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump and Joe Biden and Donald Trump, have been honest people. They tell stories that are untrue. They mislead people. They lie by omission, and sometimes they outright lie. And Neil Cavuto points out right here, Donald Trump's doing a lot of outright lying about the record of Ron DeSantis. And it's weird because that is something that you would think might impact Donald Trump's perception if for months years rather, conservatives have been told that Ron DeSantis is a great governor. Ron DeSantis has done a great job in Florida with the economy. Ron DeSantis has done a great job in Florida on the lockdowns and shutdowns and all the other stuff. Now we're being told he was a horrible governor and did terrible and all these other things. And Donald Trump's heart's not even in that conversation because you can tell he even says Florida's doing great, and then later on he'll come back and talk about how bad Florida is doing and try to say it was doing better under guys like Rick Scott and now even Charlie Crist, who's just a pathetic loser all the way around, and Republicans have been convinced that he's a pathetic loser. So I don't understand any of this at all, but he is out there saying these things, as Neil Cavuto points out. It's a lie. And the interesting thing about going after Florida the way he does, Republicans need Florida. They do. They need Florida. And talking about how it's a bad state and things are going bad and Ron DeSantis is bad and all these other things, that's not a good way to get in good with the people of Florida that you're going to need eventually in order to win the presidency. So that gets into this other part of, is doing this going to help him here in the primary and hurt him here when the general comes up?
Tom, can that group that stays with him stay with him through all of this? And can that group expand? Because if it's that same group, he would lose again.
Well, it depends on how many people are in the race. If we're talking about the Republican primary, if it's DeSantis and 4 or 5 others, then his 30 or 34% might be enough of a plurality to win out.
So he could still get the nomination, you'd think, but that same math might not help him in a general election as things stand now, or would it?
That's right. I mean, I think that's the case. He has to win over those Republicans who may not like him, may not want to vote him, and then he's got to speak to independents. I mean, the cautionary tale for Republicans in 2022 was that they lost independents. And given where the economy was, 8% inflation, $4 a gallon gas, Joe Biden's job approval rating in the low 40s, the fact that independents didn't vote overwhelmingly against the Biden administration and the Democrats in 2022, Republicans have to win independents, and Donald Trump has trouble with independents in a general election setting.
I want to go back to the Florida part of the conversation I was telling you about before. Yeah, think about it. Just think about it. He needs to win Florida. There's no question about it. You need Florida, Ohio, and you got to pick up some other states. Who is Donald Trump picking up with this kind of stuff? Who is going to say, okay, I'm listening to him trashing Ron DeSantis, I'm going to come around to his side? Now, again, maybe the Republican primary works, and I think he's the front runner. I don't think there's any question about it. That's why I don't think he needs to be doing these things. But independents, Ron DeSantis is pretty popular with independents across the country. And he's running him down, and he's doing it in a misleading way. That's not going to work, nor does it make any sense. You got to be smarter about these things. You got to be a lot smarter about these things. And I get it. You can always say this, and I will continue to point this out. Dale, you were wrong in 2016, and boy, was I. I voted for Donald Trump, but I didn't think he had a snowball's chance in hell in winning. But he did, and the reason he won is simple. Hillary Clinton was the worst presidential candidate to ever run for office. Donald Trump was the second worst, so he beat the first worst. And Joe Biden was the third worst presidential candidate to ever run for office, so he beat Donald Trump. But he beat Donald Trump. What is Donald Trump doing to pick up votes, independents, to swing Pennsylvania and Arizona and Georgia? Place you can talk about voter fraud and all this other stuff, and you stolen elections, great. How do you get over that hump? So you're now stuck into two places. One, no one can get over those hump because the election's stolen, right? That's just, there's no reason to even have the election, and you've got to just give up. Or only Donald Trump can do it. But how? What is he doing to pick up steam here? He needs to focus more on Joe Biden and what's going on with Democrats, but he's internally focused on Ron DeSantis because he's scared of him and he's lying about him. This did not work. Hopefully Donald Trump is tuning up his rallies here. He's going to figure out what he's going to do because this ain't it. This ain't it. This is only going to cost him support. Amongst Republicans, Donald Trump is losing support. You may say, well, he still has all the polls showing he's leading. Absolutely, he's the front runner. But in some polls, he's went from 90-something% support to 50-something% support. And with performances like this that we saw in Waco, Texas, he will lose more of that Republican support. Right now, he's playing a game where he's going to win the primary and lose the general. If he keeps this up, he's going to lose the primary.